Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is a TV show from Stars Entertainment that's on their own channel, Amazon Prime in the UK, and I think it's on Netflix in the US. And it's about a family of time travellers who are living in pre-revolutionary America, trying to get by in increasingly odd and strange and difficult situations. Episode 2, Between Two Fires, kicks off literally with that, a fire, where a whole mob full of regulators are burning a uniform under the command of Murtagh Fitzgibbons, and then they drag a bunch of men out and literally tar and feather them. And of course, this is a problem for Jamie, since Murtagh's his godfather and all that, and he's busy sizing up Major Knox, the guy that Governor Tryon left with him to hunt down the regulators. And it seems that Knox is doing the same thing, but it turns out they kind of respect each other, and they both kind of admit that they have some sympathies for the regulators. I mean, that's pretty much until they hear about the mob the night before and they see the horrible burns and injuries inflicted on the justices of the peace, and they find out that they actually managed to take 3 regulators captive. And it turns out they're some guy, Brian from last season, and the bad wig man, who clearly has a bit of a better hairdresser this season. Not that it does him any good, because he taunts Knox, who in a fit of rage gives him a nasty bad stab through the tummy, and that gets him dead. And Jamie's all shocked, but he ends up covering for Knox because he's trying to walk a precarious line between these two loyalties. And over a swift couple of halves, Jamie and Knox talk about it, and at first Knox is kind of beside himself at what he's done, saying he's a hypocrite and that, but then he resolves that actually what he's doing is like just work, and it fits with his oath of loyalty that he's taken to the crown. But that night, Jamie sneaks into the prison and breaks the regulator boys out and tries his best to explain, but it's kind of awkward, and they want to get the hell out of Dodge and back to Murtagh. And when they get there, he tries to justify the positions, but ultimately his side is with the regulators, not with Jamie or with the government, and he'll stand beside Brian and fight. Meanwhile, back at Fraser's Ridge, they get an emergency patient in, some guy with bad guts and breathing problems, but he ends up dying really quickly, and after a quick autopsy, Claire realises that he had appendicitis, and that the traditional folk remedies like mercury, on top of all that, killed him really fast. And Bree's a wee bit creeped out, but she's also a little bit wary of her mum doing modern medicine things like this in this period of time, because, it could lead to something bad. But after they have the funeral and Roger does his best to bide with me, she ends up asking Parsley to come and help, and she unveils the cadaver to her, and understandably, she's not very impressed. But Claire points out that, the only way they actually learn medicine is by practicing on dead bodies.
And I think you would be a good apprentice.
And since Parsley's really good at butchery, why not help her out? And eventually she agrees. And after that, she takes up a load of bread that she was baking, just like the shot in the opening scene. And she starts ripping it up to make penicillin, which Bree, who's clearly the show's voice of time travel common sense, points out that inventing antibiotics 150 years early maybe isn't going to do a lot of good to the space-time continuum. And Claire's like, nah, it'll be fine. But it's not like Bree's not got troubles of her own. Things between her and Roger, are still newlywed nice, but they're having a bit of fun out shooting and stuff, where she's really good at it and he's absolutely rubbish because Roger's rubbish at most things. I mean, he can sing, but most other things, not so good. And they're also still a little bit at odds about going back to the future, because surprisingly, Claire's actually on Roger's side, as she tells him later on.
As much as I love all of you being here, I hope you don't stay.
Because it turns out she knows that it's easier to die here in the past because of all the diseases and the big war coming, and she doesn't really want her daughter and her grandson there in the middle of it. But for now, things are actually pretty good. Family life suits the Mackenzies, even if the spectre of Stephen Bonnet and Jamie's true parentage is looming like a shadow over both of them. And just as it happens, away in Wilmington there's a 1770s MMA girl fight going on in a barn, and Pippin the Hobbit bumps into the dread pirate Aragorn, and the pair of them bond over illegal smuggling and making wagers and probably being cast in fantasy movies as well. Only then some wee skinny lad calls out Bonnet as a cheat and challenges him to a fencing match. And of course, Bonnet ends up kicking his ass, but even though the other guy yields, he still takes a knife and blinds the guy because, well, just in case you'd forgotten that this murdering, thieving, rapist pirate is actually the show's bad guy. So what did I think? Well, I think this week was really quite interesting. I mean, in that way that an early season episode absolutely should be. Episode 1 had a big fan service wedding-y thing and laid out the general relationships and story arcs, but now we're actually getting to see them move into play. I mean, this episode gave us Claire and Jamie setting off down their own separate storylines, and it gave Roger and Bree and showing what they were going through and what they're feeling, getting brought to the fore a bit more. And I don't think it's kind of a disservice to say that in a lot of points, the show Outlander kind of exists as a bit of a kitchen sink drama, or maybe like a soap opera in a lot of ways, at least for a lot of the characters. I mean, hell, somebody who knows better might be able to say for sure, but I get a really, really strong Dr. Quinn medicine woman from this season when it comes to Claire. I mean, think about it. It's her being a doctor, struggling with maladies, but it's also got the added bonus that she's a woman out of time. So there's a temptation for her to, like, break the temporal prime directive or whatever and alter history. And, that always works out brilliantly, didn't you know, in everything. But anyway, as I said, I don't actually think Outlander's that kind of show. I think it's what's classed as a fixed time loop story. So that means they can't actually change anything. So whatever they've done is already part of the fabric of the universe, and it was going to happen anyway. But I don't think they know that. So with Claire, it's more like the pressure of how do I doctor in this time without pissing off the locals and getting burned as a witch again? Or to be honest, actually hanged, because they didn't actually burn witches in America. No, seriously, if anyone ever talks to you about burning witches at Salem, tell them that's a load of nonsense because they weren't. They were all hanged. Look it up. It's interesting stuff. So yeah, and her doing the moldy bread experiment and chopping up dead bodies, that's all kind of risky business because, it could be part of the season's going to be her tenacity kind of biting her in the ass for like stepping over the bounds of common decency and people getting upset with that. Or trying to bring future ideas into the past, which, this is exactly the same thing that got that time traveler guy Ottertooth murdered. And they showed him off in like the previously on segment. So I think that might be something to think about. And I also like that we got a bit of serious relationship stuff going on with Bree and Roger. I mean, this isn't window dressing, or it shouldn't be window dressing, because I mean, Bree's still suffering PTSD from basically being raped and impregnated by Bonnet the pirate, and she's still drawing like creepy charcoal sketches of him, and that's her kind of therapy. And I mean, Roger, he might well have anointed Jamie with a wee bit of bleed and some words and stuff, but clearly it's still weighing really heavily on him, as you can see by his reaction to the drawings. And all of that's surely going to make the decision to stay in this time much more pressing to them. Also, can I just say that Lauren Dale is absolutely fantastic. On that side note, did anyone see her in Tell It to the Bees? She was really, really good in that. And it was only a mediocre film, but she was great and she had a really good performance. So there you go. And I think she's been getting better and better since she first appeared in this show. Very much more so than when they gave her not much to do back in season 3 and a little bit more to do last season. So hopefully this season they're actually going to give her character more good scenes and a bit more of a story arc because she's pretty brilliant. And I really liked how when Claire showed her the cadaver in the surgery because honestly, the reaction was absolutely priceless. Partly because you saw the character of Parsley in there, but also you saw shades of her mother, but also her great grandmother, Mrs. Fitz. And there's clearly some of that steely, no nonsense attitude in Parsley, and Lauren Lyle's absolutely captured it perfectly. And, I'm really curious to see where they go with the character. But the main storyline this week was Jamie and Murtagh. And I'll admit, I'm maybe not the exact target audience, the same as a lot of the show, being a man type and also being a bit of a film nerd and liking history, but to me, this was absolutely fascinating stuff. I mean, the whole storyline to do with the Regulators up to the Battle of Alamance is one of the main things I'm really fascinated with this season. And I also think it was some of the best subtle work we've seen from Sam, because he's having to play every single scene on multiple levels, because he's doing it just as Jamie that we can recognise, but also at the same time he's the landowning colonel, ostensibly out to catch the Regulators, and he's performing that for Knox and for Tryon. So he's also got to do that while at the same time communicating to like the Regulator guys that he's also kind of on their side. So there's so many levels on this. It's just brilliantly been done. And his scenes with Knox, they were great because he's trying to be as honest as he can while he's trying to figure the other guy out. And, for a time he sees the guy as reasonable and sympathetic. I mean, hell, the guy even tosses a coin to some poor kids. Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty. No, none of that. And then Jamie's like absolutely aghast at seeing the Bernie guys in town because he can't believe that like Murtagh would do that, and that not only that, but Murtagh was actually there leading the mob. Not that just it was his commander that he happened to be there and things got out of hand. And I was really impressed with it. I was also really impressed with the guy playing Knox, that Michael Xavier. Now, for the first half of it, I was kind of expecting him to just be some kind of a cardboard baddie soldier type that they've done before. I mean, as they say in screenwriting terms, you can either save the cat or kick the dog, meaning that if you want to establish a character as good and make the audience like them, have them do something nice and cute, like saving a cat, something relatable. And if you don't, you want them to be a villain, then you have them just do something nasty, like kick a dog. I mean, it's pretty basic, Good writers kind of bury those things cleverly so they aren't immediately obvious, but sometimes it can just be a bit blunt. And in Knox's case, we actually saw him being nice and heard him being reasonable, and we got to share in his horror at what the Regulators did because, we'd seen it at the beginning ourselves at the start. But then when he pulls the sword out, it's not clear if this is just a threat or if he's playing good cop, bad cop or something like that. But then, boom, he does the stab and kills Ethan. And after that, he's still conflicted. although it does fade away quite fast. And I'm kind of hoping that they continue to keep him sort of interestingly kind of in a grey area, although I suspect that he won't, because he's probably going to go pure baddie, because that's kind of what happens in telly. And I appreciate that at this point the show's still trying to keep us right bang in the middle with Jamie, where we don't really like people on either side because everything's just over the top, and we want things to calm down and be normal. And I think that things presumably will get worse, because we've seen in the trailer that Jamie's going to don like the whole lobster uniform and fight at Alamance, and I expect that we'll get some kind of confrontation. In fact, ironically, I'm really curious to see if they do something like put in a scene in the battle where it mirrors the scene where Jack and Jim fought in season 3. I mean, we could see that might happen. It's a bit of a ways off yet, but it could be interesting. And also, it was nice to just see some of the actors from previous seasons come back in. We had characters like Brian and Ethan, the bad wig guy, and Mr. Fanning, who was the guy who had the appendicitis, who Claire managed to save last season. Ironically, the same episode where she doesn't manage to save somebody this time when he did have an appendicitis. So that could be a bit of subtle mirroring. It might just be coincidence. And yeah, I know the usual stuff was usual in this. It looked and sounded good, and overall, it was a fairly solid episode. But you know what wasn't solid? This tree. See this tree, right? See this shot? See this tree? I hate you, tree. That tree ruined this whole shot. Seriously, like, there's a tree right in front of the actors. Why do you not go do this scene slightly differently? Why don't you move the camera? Why don't you go a bit further down the road where there's not a tree right in front of somebody? Honestly, no. That stuck out. That really bothered me. But no, I mean, seriously, okay, there wasn't much I had an issue with this week. But one scene was the actual Bonnet scene. Now, maybe it's just me, but this scene felt kind of overlong and extraneous. And I genuinely felt that this could have also been a pre-credit sequence or something. And it felt a little bit unnecessary to have it in, hammering in that Bonnet is bad man bad. I mean, we know he's bad. He's done nothing but bad things since the very beginning of the show. I mean, he's literally murdered people, robbed people. He threw somebody out of a boat to their death, and he raped one of the main characters and impregnated them. And he's just a bad guy. So it's not a shock when he does bad things. And presumably this scene is more to do reintroduce him as a person, and also Billy Boyd being reintroduced as Mr. Forbes, because he had a cameo last season as that unsuccessful suitor, for Bree. And if you go by the laws of TV budgets and actors and things like that, then clearly he's going to be an important person this season, because otherwise you wouldn't throw him into one tiny little bit randomly, because, I mean, Billy Boyd's presumably got better things to be doing with his time. And I think some people in the comments actually mentioned when he was on the previous one that he is a more important character this season, or in this book, I think was what they said. And since he's literally introduced in a dingy fighting den and he's being pally with Bonnet, I'm guessing he's not going to be on the good guy's side, because, I mean, this show kind of struggles with having characters who are shades of grey. It tends to be you're a goodie or you're a baddie, and that's basically it, and there's not an awful lot in between. And that could also be potentially an issue with Knox. As I said, I was kind of impressed with how they've done him so far, and him and Fanning, because Fanning's just a guy. But I was kind of expecting him to do something nasty, like I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't punch a budgie or something as he walks past. And just one thing to say about Bonnet. I know I've been joking a lot and putting like that footage of like the burnt like V from V for Vendetta in a few times, but I kind of hoped he was going to come back like a little mangled after the explosion last time, because you didn't really see him get out, and it would have been kind of cool if he'd come back like with a big like scar face or something like that, or missing an arm off or something. I mean, it wouldn't have been practical probably from filming purposes, but yeah, it's just me. But all of this leads me to Murtagh, and that's the one thing that didn't work for me this episode, because I mean, I know it's Murtagh, and Murtagh doesn't take any crap from anyone. I mean, he's a proper Highland warrior. He's not afraid to go and kill people. I mean, he literally chopped a dude's head off with an axe at one point. But burning guys with melty tar, I mean, that seems a bit excessive, and it feels a big step on from like robbing pay wagons and the odd bit of sedition and the general good stuff that he's been doing. It's also a little bit too spot the stiff for my liking, as I've said before. It's a bit like the cat and dog thing, This feels like just writing something bad so that, we've got an irredeemable action that means the character basically can only redeem themselves by dying. I mean, it's all gone a little bit Daenerys from Game of Thrones, and it felt like a bit too much. And frankly, if he hadn't been there, I mean, say for example, if Brian or Ethan had been in charge of that mob at the start, and Murtagh, when they finally got back at the end, that was the first time you saw him, and he said, "Oh, that's a wee bit too far, but I can't really condone what you've done, but no, I wouldn't have done that, but okay, it's fine." That might have sat a bit better with me, but yeah. Anyway, that's just me. So still, it's been a pretty good episode, and so far the season's shaping up pretty nicely. I mean, it's maybe slightly even better than the first couple of Wobby episodes of last season. So Yeah, as always, please drop some comments down below and tell me what you thought. And remember, you can find me on Twitter and you can speak to me there at Grumpy Opinions. We've got the Facebook group now. And remember, if you want, it would be really nice, you can subscribe to me on Patreon. So till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my Grumpy Opinions.